The evening rain fell in steady sheets across downtown Chicago, blurring neon lights into rivers of color on the slick pavement. Marcus Thompson hurried through the dark streets, his hand firmly clasping that of his 7-year-old daughter Lily. At 35, Marcus had mastered the rhythm of the city, weaving through shortcuts, cutting down alleys, always alert. Lily, wrapped in her bright yellow raincoat, skipped beside him, her small voice bubbling with excitement as she talked about her dance recital. Marcus only half listened, his mind flicking between her chatter and the mental checklist of dinner, groceries, and the time. They turned into a narrow alley to save a few minutes, the sound of rain echoing off the brick walls. That's when Marcus saw her, a woman sitting against the wall, her blue business suit drenched, blonde hair plastered to her pale face. She looked fragile, shaking, one shoe missing. Her legs were bent at an unnatural angle, and in her trembling hand, she clutched a nearly dead phone. "Daddy," Lily whispered, tugging at his arm. "That lady looks hurt." Marcus's first instinct was to keep walking, protect Lily, avoid trouble. But one look at the woman's face stopped him cold. She wasn't drunk. She wasn't dangerous. She was terrified. "Please," she gasped as they drew closer. "Please don't hurt me. I can't walk. My ankle, I think it's broken." Marcus crouched down, keeping Lily close behind him. Hey, it's okay," he said calmly. "We're not here to hurt you. My name's Marcus, this is my daughter Lily. You need help, right?" The woman's eyes darted between them, her breathing unsteady. "I was walking to my car," she said, voice breaking. "My heel got caught in a grate. I fell. I heard something snap. My phone's almost dead." Marcus glanced at her swollen ankle, already purple and wet from the rain. He took off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. "You're gonna be okay," he said firmly, his voice steady despite the storm. "We'll get you help." For the first time, the woman's fear softened. And as the city rain poured on, a stranger's compassion lit up one forgotten corner of Chicago. Marcus could already see the swelling forming around the woman's ankle, and from his years coaching youth sports, he knew it was serious. "Okay, let's get you some help," he said calmly. "Lily, sweetheart, remember what we practiced? Call 911 for me." His daughter nodded, her small hands gripping the phone with surprising confidence as she made the call. Marcus turned back to the injured woman, removed his jacket, and placed it beneath her head to keep her off the wet ground. Her soaked blue suit clung to her, her blonde hair matted to her face, and the gold watch on her wrist glimmered faintly under the streetlight. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Alexandra," she whispered. "Alexandra Sterling." Whether from pain or cold, her voice trembled. "The ambulance is coming, Daddy," Lily said proudly. "The lady on the phone said we did the right thing." Alexandra looked at the little girl with wonder. "You're very brave to help a stranger," she said, her voice cracking. "Most people would have walked by." Lily smiled shyly. "Daddy says that's when people need help most, when nobody knows them." Marcus felt a quiet pride in his daughter as he turned back to Alexandra, trying to keep her alert. "Do you have someone we can call? Family or friends?" he asked. Alexandra gave a sad laugh. "I have employees and business partners, but I'm not sure I have anyone who'd come just because I needed them." The honesty in her tone hit Marcus deeply. He knew that loneliness, the kind that came after loss, when the world kept moving but you were still standing still. "What do you do?" he asked gently. "I'm the CEO of Sterling Technologies," she replied bitterly. "I've closed million-dollar deals and led teams through crises, but tonight I couldn't even make it across a parking garage without falling apart." Marcus met her eyes, steady and kind. "Sounds like you've been carrying a lot on your own," he said quietly. For the first time that night, her guarded expression softened, and beneath the rain, something fragile began to thaw between them. "Ma'am, having an accident doesn't mean you're falling apart," Marcus said gently. "It means you're human. Everyone needs help sometimes." When the ambulance arrived, the paramedics thanked Marcus and Lily for staying with Alexandra and providing first aid. As they lifted her onto the stretcher, Alexandra reached out and grabbed Marcus's hand. "Wait, please. I don't even know your last name. You stayed when you could have just walked away. Can I have your contact info? I'd like to thank you properly when I'm not sitting in an alley." Marcus hesitated, uncomfortable being rewarded for simple kindness, but her sincerity disarmed him. So he gave her his number, not expecting to ever hear from her again. 3 days later, an unfamiliar number flashed on his phone. It was Alexandra, calling from the hospital. "Marcus, I wanted to tell you my ankle was broken, but it'll heal fine. More importantly, I wanted to thank you and Lily." "I've been thinking about that night," Marcus replied. "I'm just glad you're okay. Anyone would have done the same." Alexandra's voice softened. "But they didn't. Security footage showed 7 people walk past me before you stopped. 7 people saw me sitting injured and chose not to help because it was inconvenient. That night I realized something. I've spent 15 years building a company and chasing success, but I've never built a life where anyone would stop for me like you did. I don't have a community. I don't even have a real friendship with my daughter like you have with Lily." "You have a daughter?" Marcus asked. "Sophia," she said quietly. "She's 8. She lives with her father because I've been too busy working to be a real parent." Lying there hurt and afraid, I realized if something happened to me, Sophia would hear about it from my lawyer, not from her mom. That's not the legacy I want. Over the following months, an unlikely friendship grew between Marcus and Alexandra. True to her word, she began changing her priorities, asking Marcus for advice about being more present as a parent. Marcus, who lived modestly but was rich in empathy and experience, found himself mentoring a CEO about work-life balance and genuine human connection. In return, Alexandra used her resources to help Marcus find opportunities, not through charity, but empowerment. A better job with flexible hours, access to community programs for single parents, and eventually a role managing community outreach for Sterling Technologies' new family wellness initiative. Meanwhile, Alexandra began rebuilding her bond with Sophia, inspired by Marcus's example. She reduced her work hours, showed up to school plays, and learned that real love isn't about perfection or power. It's about being there. 2 years after that stormy night in the alley, Marcus and Lily attended a community event hosted by Sterling Technologies, where Alexandra and Sophia stood on stage together, smiling, not as a CEO and guest, but as 2 families forever changed by one act of compassion. Alexandra stood on stage with her daughter Sophia beside her, announcing the expansion of family support programs for all employees. "This initiative," she said, "was inspired by someone who taught me that success isn't measured by profit margins or market share, but by whether we show up for each other when it matters most." 2 years ago, I was sitting in an alley, unable to walk, when a single father and his little girl stopped to help me even though they had nothing to gain. They reminded me that being human means helping others, even when it's inconvenient. Her voice softened as she looked directly at Marcus in the crowd. "Thank you for showing me that true strength is measured by compassion, and real wealth is found in relationships, not bank accounts." The audience applauded as Marcus and Lily smiled proudly from their seats, knowing their small act of kindness had rippled far beyond that rainy night. The injured CEO had learned that vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was the doorway to change, and Marcus had proven that kindness could rewrite destinies. The story that began in a dark Chicago alley had turned into a testament of humanity, showing how one act of compassion could transform 2 lives and ignite a movement. That night, as rain once again fell softly over the city, Marcus walked home with Lily by his side, her yellow raincoat glowing under the streetlights, a quiet reminder that the lessons we teach through love often outlast everything else. Marcus gently asked Alexandra if there was someone they could call, family or friends who should know she was hurt, but she let out a tired laugh, admitting she only had employees and business contacts, not anyone who would come simply because she needed them. Her words carried a loneliness Marcus recognized from his early days as a single parent, before he built a small circle of support. Trying to keep her talking, he asked what she did, and she replied that she was the CEO of Sterling Technologies, frustrated that despite closing million-dollar deals and managing crises, she couldn't even walk across a parking garage without falling apart. Marcus heard the pain beneath her pride and said softly that having an accident didn't mean she was falling apart. It meant she was human, and everyone needs help sometimes. When the ambulance arrived, the paramedics thanked Marcus and Lily for staying with her, and as they lifted Alexandra onto the stretcher, she reached for Marcus's hand and asked for his contact information, wanting to thank him properly once she wasn't sitting in an alley. Though uncomfortable with the idea, he relented and gave her his number, never expecting to hear from her again. 3 days later, Marcus received a call from an unfamiliar number. It was Alexandra, calling from her hospital bed to say her ankle was broken but would heal fine, and more importantly, to thank him and Lily for stopping. When Marcus said anyone would have done the same, she quietly told him they hadn't. Security footage showed 7 people had walked past her before he stopped. That night made her realize she had spent 15 years building a company and accumulating success but had never built a life where anyone would stop for her out of care. She confessed she had no community, no real friends, and not even the kind of relationship with her daughter that Marcus had with Lily. When Marcus asked about her daughter, she said her name was Sophia, 8 years old, living mostly with her father because she worked 80-hour weeks and didn't know how to slow down. Her voice broke as she admitted that while she sat there injured and afraid, she couldn't stop thinking that if something happened to her, Sophia would hear it from an assistant or a lawyer, not from her mother, and that wasn't the kind of legacy she wanted to leave behind. Over the following months, an unexpected friendship blossomed between Marcus and Alexandra. True to her word, Alexandra was determined to change her priorities and began seeking Marcus's advice on how to become a more present and compassionate parent. Marcus, though struggling financially, was rich in empathy, patience, and life experience, and soon found himself mentoring a powerful CEO on balancing work, family, and emotional connection. In return, Alexandra used her influence not as charity but to create real opportunities for Marcus, helping him secure a better job with flexible hours, connecting him with community programs for single parents, and eventually offering him a position managing community outreach for Sterling Technologies' new family wellness initiative. Meanwhile, Alexandra worked to rebuild her relationship with her daughter, Sophia. Inspired by Marcus's simple yet powerful example, she learned that presence meant more than perfection and that real love was built through time, vulnerability, and consistency, not corporate strategies or efficiency. 2 years after that rainy night in the alley, Marcus and Lily attended a community event hosted by Sterling Technologies. On stage, Alexandra stood proudly with Sophia beside her, announcing the company's expanded family support programs. "This initiative," she said, her voice steady but emotional, "was inspired by someone who taught me that true success isn't measured by profit margins or market share, but by whether we show up for each other when it matters." She looked toward Marcus in the crowd and continued, "2 years ago, I was alone and unable to walk, sitting in an alley, when a single father and his little girl stopped to help me without expecting anything in return. They reminded me that being human means helping others, even when it's inconvenient. Marcus, thank you for teaching me that strength lies in compassion, and that real wealth is measured in love, family, and community, not money." The woman who once defined herself by power had discovered that vulnerability was not weakness, and the man who had simply chosen kindness had changed a life forever, proving that the most valuable lesson we can pass on to our children is that kindness matters far more than convenience. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that we're all vulnerable at times, and that taking a moment to help can make a world of difference, please like this video, share it with someone who believes in compassion and community, and subscribe for more stories that celebrate everyday kindness. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Maybe a time when helping someone in need changed your perspective, or when a stranger's kindness lifted you during a difficult moment. Remember, the greatest lesson we can pass on to the next generation is that we help others not for reward or recognition, but simply because it's the right thing to do.